Hi, my name is Mackenzie Serratt, and this will be my submission for our State of the Union speech analyses. My first speech I will be looking at is Ronald Reagan's speech from 1984, and then the second will be Barack Obama's from 2014. So, for Ronald Reagan's speech in 1984, he was following the recession that occurred in the early 1980s. He had a lot of focus on some of the recent successes in economic growth that had occurred under his administration. The key points I'm going to be focusing on, and I felt like he was as well, were his goals to continue to decrease inflation rates as well as unemployment rates. And he was also encouraging kind of a smaller government and less government spending. So he was mostly successful in reaching these goals. Inflation was kept under 5% for the rest of his administration. And then by 1988, unemployment had hit a 14-year low. Unfortunately, with the government spending being decreased, the national debt did rise. And then we wound up hitting a record annual deficit. I found this information on the Ronald Reagan Presidential Library and Museum's website. Overall, I would grade Reagan's speech at an A minus. Felt like the speech was delivered with just an overall sense of optimism. He was very engaged with the crowd. When they all started laughing at something he had said, he kind of paused, embraced it, said, "Oh, did I say something funny?" and let him kind of have their moment before he carried on. But there was just an overall feeling of success, looked back at his accomplishments and essentially kept the goal of just wanting to aim further and reach higher from there on out. Unfortunately, I did feel like his content was a little bit scattered in the speech. It just felt like when he was going in between talking about the economy and then discussing space travel and some goals with the military, keeping the peace and then wanting to increase their budget somewhat, it just didn't really feel very fluid to me. Felt like he kind of broke it up into the four parts and they didn't relate back to each other, which I felt was just a little hard to follow. I will say, though, the way that he spoke with the crowd, just how he addressed his listeners and the crowd in front of him, and Americans in general, felt super unified. At one point he even said that he preferred to refer to everybody and speak to patriotic Americans as opposed to like a bipartisan group that would be essentially opposing to each other. From the crowd reactions you can see in the recording and just at the time of the speech being delivered, you first see Vice President Bush. He's just showing strong, enthusiastic support throughout the speech. He's laughing at Reagan's jokes. He's standing up and applauding. He's behind everything that Reagan has to say. And next to Bush, you have the Speaker of the House, Tip O'Neill. He was very respectful despite him and Reagan kind of having a difficult relationship. I don't remember exactly where I saw it, but there was a quote from O'Neill basically talking about how nasty and evil Reagan was. Despite that, though, he's still kind of following with the humor. He's clapping. He's being respectful towards Reagan as he's delivering the speech. He showed much stronger support towards some of Reagan's bipartisan ideas as compared to when he was talking about like lowering taxes or shrinking the government, for lack of better words. But in general, that crowd just seemed less tense than you would expect in like a bipartisan group like that. Generally, everyone was pretty united, respect from everybody, though Republicans were obviously more expressive towards some ideas, standing up and applauding and cheering, where you would see the Democratic Party maybe more reserved, still in their seat, that sort of thing. So then when we move on to Obama's State of the Union speech from 2014, he's also very focused on economic growth. he was really looking at like a middle out strategy at this point and wanting to strengthen the middle class. So his focus at this point was on job creation. He wanted to improve education to make these jobs more accessible, and essentially the whole equal opportunity focus of his administration. And Obama was also pretty successful in reaching these goals. One thing that was developed under his administration was the WIOA, or the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. And this funded $10 billion annually to education and training for specific jobs, kind of programs that would help people become more hireable and get the skills that they needed to join the workforce. And this sort of program is still in effect and being used. I found this information on the Department of Labor website. And then another part of Obama's goal to kind of grow the economy was to decrease unemployment. He was successful in this as well. From 2009, the unemployment rate was at 10%, and by 2017, it had decreased to 4.7%. He also created some long-lasting job growth. There was a increase in jobs over 79 months, which was one of the longest stretches of job growth at that point. I found this information on AmericanProgress.org. As far as maybe some failures, for lack of better words, one thing Obama did want to do was federally increase the minimum wage up to $10.10. This did not pass, so that did not wind up happening. He'd also expected more improvement to the middle class in their economy. There was some, obviously, but it wasn't quite what he had expected it to be. Overall, I would give Obama an A- for his speech as well. I felt like the delivery was very clear. It was unbiased. Very absorbable. It was more like lectured-like and structured compared to Reagan's, where it felt like he was kind of storytelling, reminiscing on the improvements, that sort of deal. It felt like the content all flowed together very easily. Any of the topics that he brought up, whether it was climate change, military advancements, women in the workforce, all of that, he was able to bring it back around to how improvements could also lead to more jobs, lead to improved education, everything. It all just kind of related into each other. He did well involving his crowd kind of by relating. He talked about how he was a son of a single child or a single mother, and now he's the president of the United States. He had turned to the Speaker of the House. He talked about how a barkeep's son was now up there with him. My only criticism really was that I felt like he could have offered more of an argument towards what he already had hit on, where the Republicans would disagree with him, if that makes sense. He kind of just acknowledged that they wouldn't like it or that they would disagree, and then he didn't offer any more explanation to that. The crowd response was, obviously divided in both, but I would say more so in Obama's. Of course, you have Vice President Biden. He's there. He's got a huge smile on his face, applauding in agreement with everything that Obama has to say. However, you see the Speaker of the House, John Boehner, and he is pretty much neutral reaction, hands across his lap, nothing, unless it's something like extremely bipartisan affiliated, like guest recognition, military recognition, or, when Obama starts discussing American values. The crowd response, same thing. You've got kind of the black and white, either very minimal applause, Republicans are sitting down in their chair, or you've got Democrats that are just soaring with excitement. But that is my analysis. I hope I didn't go over the time. Thanks for listening.